Welcome to Sarder TV, an idea sharing platform founded by Russell Sarder, who's an author, investor, and the CEO of Netcom Learning. Our guest today is Marga Hoek. Marga is a 3-time CEO, a thought leader, and an author, and she's here to tell us more about her book, Tech for Good, Solving the World's Greatest Challenges. Marga, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really great to have you here. You have such an amazing background. You've done so many things. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your career and how you got to where you are today.
Great, thanks. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Vazali. Well, where I am today, that's been a journey, that's for sure, like everyone. So if I go back a little bit, what is the foundation in a way of what I do today is I'm a 3-time CEO. I was CEO in the construction, real estate, spatial development. And in that time, more and more it stood out to me that it's great to be a business leader, but it's even greater if what you do really matters. You know, if your business is doing well and is thriving financially, but also you create a positive impact on your environment, on the people around you, you know, that what you do matters. And apparently so, I stood out in doing that. And then I was invited to set up and chair the Sustainable Business Association, which I'd done for many years. And it was a privilege, because I could see so many businesses in so many different sectors, what they were struggling with, but also what great things they can do and how businesses can be a force for good in that world, in our world. And that inspired me so much. At that time, and sometime I think it was 2014, then I thought of the slogan, business for good is good business. And the reason for that is that now that has changed a little bit, let's say it that way. But at that time, you know, sustainability and social responsibility and all those words were like, okay, I have a business, I want to be profitable, so let's not, you know, do it too much because it will cost money. Whereas my conviction is that actually it's a positive synergy. You know, you can have a great business case and at the same time have a positive impact. So hence that motto. Mm-hmm. And because I did that and I was really trying to impact where I could, when I could, it's become my personal mission, if you will. I also started to write books. And at the beginning, not that serious, but, you know, it caught me and I thought it is a great way to share your vision and to put things into words that inspire people. You know, you can scale up your vision much more rapidly, of course, if you write books. And then I wrote the first book, The $1 Trillion Shift, on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I focused on how can actually not only business help the Sustainable Development Goals, which makes sense, but also the other way around. How can engaging with such global goals, global challenges like poverty, biodiversity, inequality, all those important things, how can it also boost your business? And that has become my path since. So by now I do non-executive roles. I do board consultancy with my company Business for Good, which I named like that as well. And I write books that I think will help people. I hope that will help people and speak about that around the world.
Yeah, that's great. So we're here to talk about your new book, Tech for Good. Tell us about the motivation behind writing this book.
Yeah, thank you. So to pick back up what I just said about the $1 Trillion Shift and that book, when I wrote that, I was, you know, it's always a discovery for myself as well, because you research so much for such a book. And I found it's great the role that technology plays actually if we want to achieve those global goals. And for those people that don't know the global goals, we have set out 17 sustainable development goals that cover all aspects of ESG that some others will work with. And it's a timeline from 2015 to 2030. And it's actually what I call the new definition of sustainability, because it encompasses everything we need to solve on social, ecological, and governance aspects. And that was all described in the $1 Trillion Shift and how that actually unlocks a $12 trillion market opportunity. And in that book, there's a chapter about technology, and that is fascinating. imagine that technology impacts 12 of the 17 goals. 70% of what we need to do can be impacted by technology. So I thought this is so important. Yeah. I also noticed that, and I noticed that especially in boardrooms, since I'm on boards, that people are shy to acknowledge that they lack knowledge about technology and about all kinds of new technologies, which is totally normal because, things happen so fast. We all need to be educated and need to learn, But especially in boardrooms, people shy away from that and feel ashamed almost not to know it. So I thought, we need to educate people, but then in a way that is accessible. Because there's so many books about technology, and even if I, read them, then I think, oh God, it's so much, it's complex. And so I wanted to write about technologies in a way that's accessible and that's also enjoyable to educate yourself and to read on it. And the third reason to write the book was that I see so much fear, negativism, despair around technology, that it's actually dominating the debate around technology. And that's understandable, because of course, where there's new technologies, there are threats and there are risks and things go wrong or people have malintentions. So we need governance to protect us all from that. But it's taking the debate away from the fact that technology is also our only hope. If we don't use technology to solve all our problems around the world, to help agriculture, to help education, to provide people access to healthcare, many topics, then we won't achieve it. So we need technology. So with only negativism around it, we're not going to do that. And so that was my third reason to write the book.
So then tell us, what are some ways that you're seeing technology being used to address some of these challenges you just spoke about around in agriculture and education and healthcare?
Oh, in so many ways. So the book describes 8 groups of technologies. And let's not get on into all those technicalities, but it goes from AI and data to 3D printing to robotics to advanced materials, extended realities, autonomous vehicles, blockchain, and space tech. So those are all the 8 groups. And what you see is this is a very novel time in the way that if you look at former industrial revolutions, it was 1-2 inventions that were big things. We got gas and light, we got heating in our houses, we got access to internet, the former digital revolution, which is not finished, of course, for everybody on this planet. And that was relatively simple. But now it's a spectrum. It's a wide range of technologies that are partly physical, partly digital, and blend, merge, and combine, like a huge toolkit, if you will. And that toolkit, if you imagine opening it up at different times throughout a couple of years, you have different tools in there, or you have new variations of the same tools in there. And that's more or less what it is. And now this huge toolkit we can use to improve every single business sector or every single global goal, what I just referred to. So for instance, if you look at healthcare, now we can help people in remote areas by digital connection and AI, and even by having a robot in place to do surgeries in a remote area that couldn't be done before. We can use AI to analyze huge amounts of data and get predictions on illnesses like, for instance, breast cancer or other things, and diagnosis in a very short period of time. Whereas before, it cost a lot more money and it took a lot more time. So that's just an example of healthcare. If you think about education, we can revolutionize education. One, we can take it to places that are not accessible. We're all in the developed part of the world. We have schools, we have relatively good systems. There's a lot of parts in the world where that's not the case, where there's war or where there's huge classes with 60 kids in it, or where children just can't reach their schools. And now we have the opportunity to do it digitally in a simple way, or at least provide additional education online. We can educate now our children, for instance, by virtual and augmented reality, to put on their glasses, literally, and step into other parts of the world, which has a huge impact on intercultural understanding. For instance, if you literally can travel to another part in the world. So education is huge. Another part, like for instance, agriculture, we know we waste 1/3 of food being produced or lose it. But we also need a lot more food for the growing world population, and especially in more difficult areas around the world. And now with the use of sensors and robots and AI platforms, people can produce for lesser costs, but also less use of water and energy, produce more food in the same amount of space. I'm just trying to explain it in a very simple way, otherwise making it complex doesn't help. All these areas I describe in the book, all these sectors and all these technologies, but it's beyond our imagination what we actually can do with so many technologies that are ready to be implemented already, which is also important. It's not all experimental anymore. Of course, there's new waves of technologies that come about that are still experimental or very expensive, but that doesn't apply to all of them.
Yeah. What do you see as some of the challenges that organizations and businesses might have in implementing some of these great technologies that are out there? What are some of the roadblocks that they may face, and what are some things that they could do to overcome that? Because it's a lot and it's going so fast.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think learning from things I see that don't work is always the most easy thing. So what I see often is that companies then make reports and analyze across all these technologies and all of their businesses, and out comes a big plan, which is they can't ever execute on that. So I always say, just select one thing that impacts your business in a positive way, that is close to the organization's DNA and sector, and apply it there. So if you're in agriculture, do something there. If you're in the health sector, do something there. Make that work. So also don't try to do something which is far out in the future, but make it work, because you need to empower and give everybody the confidence and the self-confidence that this company can do these things. That's one way. Another way is to have your employees educated in a very accessible way. Sometimes say, just try out some things for yourself. Everybody can try out AI with photos or whatever, just to familiarize yourself with new technologies. Now, of course, it's the older people in the working population that have this problem, whereas Generation Z millennials are tech savvy, tech native. I mean, they can teach us, if I speak for myself. I always advise also to use some tech internally in the company, for DAI purposes, for training and education purposes. I mean, I know some companies that use augmented reality for company training purposes. It's not so complex, and you get this technology-driven culture from the ground if you're not a high-tech company. That's one thing. Another thing is collaborations. What you see now is it takes too long for companies to go through the whole route to learn new things, then apply, and then scale up. Whereas if you combine a couple of companies that bring in different skills, or bring in the money, the technology, and the sector, and you bring those together, either in a joint venture or whatever shape or form, then you learn from each other, and it's much more feasible to get things executed in short term. That's also a great way.
Yeah, I love the examples of just starting small.
Yeah.
And starting from the ground up and really involving your employees in that. I think those are great examples of reducing that feeling of overwhelm.
Well, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
because otherwise people will fear things, they will hold back. And another way, which I see in some companies and which I try to motivate to do, is engage with some good causes. You have, for instance, the Plastic Soup Foundation, you have the Ocean Cleanup that use all kinds of new technology to get the plastic out of the ocean and put it into, recycled products. And people are very enthusiastic if you do something with a purpose in combination with technology. And then they get the feeling, okay, we're in this space. We're doing things like that. We could do more.
Right. What is it? What is the investment required to start getting into these technologies, to do tech for good? Does it require a big investment? Does it require deep pockets, or is there a way to start doing some of these things where you see results without a big investment? It's great for organizations that might have deep pockets, but what about for startups or for organizations that don't have deep pockets?
Yeah. Very much depends. If you're a tech company, so you're the producer of those technologies that are going to be applied by others, so you're in one of these 8 groups that I described in the book, for instance, advanced materials, to name one. That's a long road often, because first you invent something, then you have to see how can we apply it. It has to be refined, developed, and then later on becomes a business case. So there's quite some technologies that have a long leeway before it can be commercialized. That's tough. More and more tech startups are smarter in the way that they don't only have a technology, but from the beginning on, they make clear how it can be applied. So in a way, they combine the tech with the sector. So for instance, to improve autonomous cars, or to improve manufacturing, so then it's less abstract and it's directly related. That makes it easier. As soon as the technology or the space around that technology is more well known to investors, you will see a steep line up in investors' interest. To a certain extent, that's good, and also goes over the top, of course. And then you get, what you get. To do some things, it's often not as expensive as you think, but it also depends on the scale of the business case, or how much you can zoom out. To give you an example, if you first want to make infrastructure to bring seeds to South America, because we need to grow vegetables or whatever kind of crop there, that's going to take forever. It's going to take a lot of money, but the person paying for it is partly government, partly companies, etc. Now we have drones that can simply bring it there. And those drones are not expensive anymore. But of course, it demands that you don't stick to your own sector, but that you collaborate with a company that has those things, has them developed, and you have the application and the need, and they have the technology. Because if you're going to do it yourself, it's going to be, again, a long road and a lot of investment. So there you go. Again, the collaboration is key in those cases.
Sure.
And so even big companies do that, huh? It's not only startups. So for instance, Unilever, a gigantic listed company in the food sector, started up a collaboration with Google Cloud to get eyes on the ground to be able to identify if they did sustainable sourcing, because they wanted to beat deforestation. Now they could have gone by it themselves, but it's much smarter to have that collaboration, because then there's something in it for both of them, both invest, and it gets done much quicker.
So would you say that the failure to implement these technologies, AI, would adversely affect the bottom line of these organizations in the future? If they don't embrace these technologies, would it impact the way they are competitive, their profitability?
Absolutely. So it's one thing, the front door, to say, okay, you have to go and do that, and it's going to improve your competitiveness. It's going to improve, you're going to be able to unlock new markets. And a big part of the book is about that. What's the golden star region, the combination of sustainability and technology and new markets. But the opposite is also true, naming the back door. That when you don't do it, you're going to lose out in the long run, because a lot of those technologies make things cheaper, make them more interesting for clients, make you more versatile in supply chains, make you be able to act quicker or do things that you couldn't do before. So to give you a simple example, Siemens, for instance, before long, shipped throughout the world spare parts for their trains, for instance. Those are things you never think about, huh?
Yeah.
But that has a huge footprint. Now they're changing it into certain locations to 3D print spare parts on demand. So if you're in the business of providing these spare parts that are going to be shipped around the world, instead of being in the business of providing 3D printing solutions or the materials they need for that, you're going to be phased out, because for Siemens, this is much cheaper. They have no waste, they have no footprint, and they can do it much quicker. So happier, better provided clients. So that's an example how you'll be disrupted even if you don't enter into the tech arena.
You spoke about one of the reasons that you wrote this book was around the negativity that you're seeing around the perception of these technologies and things. Tell us a little bit more about that. What is it that you're seeing?
Well, I think everybody will see that, huh? You only need to read the newspapers and see the news, or be in a governance debate around AI and the threats and the dangers of other technologies. And that's understandable, because what is new we fear, and partly rightfully so, because there's not only people applying technology for good, but there's also a lot of bad users and people that have the wrong intentions doing it, like fraud, cybercrime, we can influencing in an illegitimate way. So there's a lot of male use as well. But in the end of the day, we also have to think about what is effective. If we only talk about technology in a bad way, and if all the legislations, laws, rules aim to prevent doing harm, instead of focusing on doing good, we still do not get what we need. And we desperately need technologies to do good. So we have to have governance, legislations, procurement that helps us to scale up tech for good. And I thought, let me make a book about that positive side. The negative people know about, but the positive side, so that people know that we can, for instance, restore our dying coral reefs with 3D printing. And that we can provide access to education anywhere in the world by now. That a lot of people don't have to die in fires because we can send robots in. Well, we can give dozens of examples, and that is so important that I wanted to shed a light on technology for good, how it can literally solve the world's greatest challenges.
And in your books, you state specifically around AI, that AI is neither good or bad. It's a tool we must use responsibly. So I know we're having this discussion around negativity and, bad uses of these technologies that can be applied. How would you at least define the responsible use of AI?
Yeah.
And what are some of the things, like some of the key challenges around achieving this?
Yeah. Well, AI and other technology, but of course AI is there in a very dominant way. For good for me means, and I explained that in the book obviously, that it has a purpose and that it creates benefits for all stakeholders and not just a few. So if technology just benefits one stakeholder a lot, disregards all others, and it doesn't create any advantage for the world nor its people, then it doesn't serve a purpose. So, and even stronger, technology should do good. And that's why I explicitly connected it to make it tangible, with these sustainable development goals. Those are the 17 things we need to solve. So technologies need to help to solve hunger. It needs to help to solve inequality and not enlarge it, for instance. It needs to help education around the world and poverty and all those important things. If it has that impact, we should embrace it and we should help it and we should scale it up.
How far along do you think we are on the timeline of the sustainability goals? There's a target of 2050. How do you think we're doing?
2030 even, yeah. It's 15 years from 2015 to 2030. That means we're more than halfway through. And obviously, as you understand, we're not more than halfway through the results. So more time has passed with too little impact. So we need to accelerate and we need to scale up. And that's where technology comes in. We can hugely accelerate and scale up things and still get it done in time. And of course, it's important to set goals and it's important to achieve them. It's even more important that we go in the right pace, in the right direction. Instead of, dwelling over the details, how much percentage we got things covered, because sometimes I think too much energy goes into that, but it's in all of our best interest to get there.
Yeah. What, in which areas do you think we've sort of made the most progress so far? And where do you think we still need to work harder toward?
I think we make progress, of course, in the area of technology. There's a lot happening. In the first generation renewable energy, so to say, with wind and solar. But now those wind and solars come into next generation. I shared a story on my Instagram account recently about very thin layers of solar panels that can be stuck on everywhere. And that houses, for instance, can become power plants in a way because they can create more renewable energy than they need, so they can provide for their surroundings. We're getting there. It takes a long time, but that's starting to happen. I think in terms of awareness in many sectors, a lot is happening. In terms of best practices that start coming about, it's also starting to happen. Now it's a matter of scaling it up. And I see a lot happening around biodiversity, but it's still too little and too slow. So both need more pace and more scale.
We've seen a lot of progress in all these technologies that you outline in your book, and so many different ways they've been applied to do good. What do you see for the future? Where do you see it going forward? Specifically, if you can focus on AI.
Well, I'm now thinking what I see or what I hope, Those things are of course. But what I think, AI will be a lot more applied in healthcare. And what's the reason for it's not only the technology, but it's also, what's the greater interest around it. So we live on a planet with a lot of people. All those people will become older and we can't pay for that anymore. And that's going to be a driver to drive the application of AI forward, because with AI we can save time. The analysis, like the example I gave in the beginning, can be done much quicker over much more data, so we can be more preventive in healthcare, and it will tremendously lower the cost. So things like that have a big economical impact, that will move forward quickly, I expect.
And then what do you think are some of the challenges going forward in some of these great technologies that you've outlined, right, that are already having this great impact in different ways? Do you see any additional challenges around the implementation or the creation or market forces that might slow things down, or not make it as easy to implement or do some of these good things that we've already seen happening?
Well, governance is of course maybe the most important thing. We have to get governance right. It has to stimulate tech for good, and it has to mitigate the risks that happen around technology. And the problem with governance is that it's the development and the formalization of governance is too slow compared to the pace of technology. So we have to speed up the process around governance. I did a panel in London the other day of the FT around this topic, saying, we have to reinvent policy making and governance development in a way that's appropriate to the pace technology develops. Because if not, you're always behind. It's not going to help. So that's one very big thing. The investments, of course, are very important. And part of these technologies do well, part of the applications and part of the implementations do well, but not all of them. So we have to have a look, okay, what technologies are important, which have a business case and are investor ready, so to say, but which not, and are very important, and we need to help develop, for instance. Of course, in the public domain and public spaces, I gave you the example of roads versus drones, remember? But there's a lot of things in terms of infrastructure that need to be done that can't be done by business. So public-private partnerships and thinking together around how can we scale these things up and what are the prerequisites to get that done is very important. And of course, education. We have to educate so many people. If you look at the amount of professions that are going to be impacted by technology, not so much that they all disappear, but at the least they are going to be reformed or have other use. We enter an era where humans and technology have to work alongside together. So jobs are going to be impacted. So we have to invest hugely in getting the right labor force for the future that can work together and work with all of these technologies. That's an area where we lack progress for sure.
And who would you say would be responsible for this in terms of the governance? Is it governments? Is it organizations? Is it everyone working together? And what do you think of the progress made so far?
We're learning and developing. But like I said, it's easy to say for me in this podcast and to comment. And in real life, it's complex, and I'm aware of that. But just now, some new legislations have been formalized around AI, so it's picking up. It's a joint responsibility of governments, of business, of the academic world, everybody together. And that's the thing with our time, we have no isolated problems. We have holistic challenges where different parties have to be able to work together to really break through the hurdles, like you said, and the limitations and the challenges. On a positive note, otherwise we talk so much about problems and hurdles, and I wrote this book on the positive side. I also write in the book around the Tech for Good movement. And I give a lot of examples of tech for good organizations around the world, people that dedicate their time to help this. And it's impressive. It's really impressive. It's a global movement now. So I have a line in the book that says, it's more than a hashtag, it's a global movement. And when that happens, we can create a lot of turmoil and pace in getting things done. And I see these tech for good organizations, and anybody can look them up in the book in any area of the world, work together with multinationals, work together with startups and scale-ups and academic world and governments. And that's what we need. So the ecosystems are starting to work and getting there.
Yeah, that's great. And what is it that you're seeing? These ecosystems that are starting to work together, all these organizations that are very passionate about it, how are they really helping drive the movement forward?
Well, if big companies and businesses set examples of what they can do, and they commit to getting those things done, they commit to how they will apply the technology, if the investors are willing to put in the investments needed to do that, if companies are willing to sign up for governance codes that protect people from maluse, and if governments then in their term are willing to speed up and put some workforce on developing the right legislations and rules of the game, so to say, because we're playing a new game and we have too many old rules, so we need new rules. And if all these things happen more or less at the same time, then of course you create a wave that can lift us to the next phase.
And finally, my last question to you is, how do we scale tech for good to reach its full potential? And I think you've talked about that in throughout this
I've talked about
interview.
It throughout our conversation. So it's by aiming for scaling, by the intention of scaling. So when we do something, and whoever that is, the academic world, businesses, small businesses, large businesses, finance institutions, whoever, do something, always have the intention to scale it up. So we must do something already in the back of our minds. Okay, if this works in this place in the world, we can, adapt it and apply it elsewhere in the world. And what helps is that the mindset of business nowadays is much more global, of course, due to that technology and the fact that we are digital than, let's say, 20 years ago. So that's the mindset. But I personally help with Business for Good, entrepreneurs that start something, say, okay, this is great, but we keep in the back of our heads, we do this, but then with the intention to do it then times 10 and then times 100. It's another way of thinking, and that is what we really need, and I see that growing, definitely.
That's a great way to bring this all together and to wrap it up, Marga. Thank you so much for all your insights.
Great, and if you allow me some last words.
Absolutely.
After I've written the book, which is always a special moment, because first you're occupied with all the chapters and all the content you want to check and all the research and all that, and then it's done. And then I thought, what's the most important underlying message of this book? And that has become the subtitle for a reason. And then I thought, I want to help people imagine what we can do instead of dwelling on what we cannot do. And that's why the book is called Imagine. That's also why I put a lot of art in it. Art, visuals, there's a QR code to a film people can watch that takes you through the story. And every chapter starts with showing you in a little film, so to say, in a little story, what the world could look like if we apply that specific technology. And that's what I hope to do with this book, to give people, it's a book of hope, you could say, to give people the ingredients to be able to imagine what can be done and thus empower them to do it. And it must be reasonably good, because I heard last week it won the Axiom Golden Business Book Award medal.
Oh, wow, congratulations. That's great. Yeah. No, it is a great book. You have a lot in there that describes all these technologies in a very easy way to digest, even for people who are non-technical, and very visual
as well. That's the majority, so that's important.
Yeah. Yes. So it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and it has 75 real life business cases.
Yeah.
And I always note that people like those the most. Just reading how companies really do it and set examples, because it's what really happens. It's not a theory. It's what really happens.
Yes. Yeah. It's great example.
Well, great. Well, it's lovely conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Marga. Thanks for joining us.
It was a great pleasure.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk soon.
See you soon.
And thank you everyone for joining Sarder TV.